let's get right into it. Here I have a 24 by 36 inch Gallery Series archival quality stretched canvas, which I'm really excited to paint on. So we're going to open it up and get painting. I really like painting on larger canvases, and I think it's just because I can be a little bit more loose with my brush strokes, which I really enjoy. But we're going to start off toning the canvas, and I'm actually going to do it with acrylic paint this time. I really wanted to start painting the same day, and so I needed something that would dry very quick, and I knew already you can paint oil on acrylic. And so I thought, well, why don't I just tone the canvas with acrylic paint? And I tried it out and it really worked well. You can see I thinned the paint down quite a bit with a lot of water, and I put it on very thin, and then I used a paper towel to scrub at it and just wipe it away so that I could have a nice even tone of burnt sienna, which is the color that I used. And I was really happy with it. The coat that I put on was so thin and so watered down that after I completed the toning, the canvas surface pretty much felt the same way it did before. It just left a nice even stain, which is all I want because it helps me judge my colors correctly. And now we're going to move on to tracing out the composition, and I did it with a digital projector. It is a very easy way to get exactly what you want. And after I did so, I just wanted to maybe add a few things and tweak it a little bit so that I could improve the image even more. And then after I did that, it wasn't long before it was dry because I used acrylic paint, actually the same paint that I did for the toning for the sketch, just less watered down. Now I'm going to use some linseed oil and mix up a color to put the sky on. So I'm going to start out with a larger flat brush. I don't remember the exact size of it, but you can see it there. I'm going to start out with a little bit of linseed oil and add burnt sienna to the mixture, as well as some phthalo blue. And we're also going to add sky blue and also some more burnt sienna. I think I got a little bit of cad yellow in there by accident. That's totally fine. But what I'm going for here, as I add in a little bit of titanium white here, is I'm going for a gray color. And if you mix opposites, like orangey browns, like the sienna is a very orangey brown, and then blues, you're gonna end up with a gray. And I'm using the titanium white to lift the value until I get a sky color that I'm proud of. And I'm gonna begin the block-in stage. I'm going to work with what is furthest away and then paint my way forward with the composition. And really in the blocking stage, I'm focusing more on shapes and colors and values rather than getting bogged down in details. I want to keep everything general and simple and create an image that could be almost blurry, as if the image was out of focus, or you were looking through rough glass, something like that. I just want to get the main ideas on and focus on capturing, like I said, the colors and the values, as well as the shapes. And I'm following closely to the sketch that I have laid down. It is providing me with a nice template to make sure I get everything where it's supposed to be, and then from there we can move into a little bit more of those details later on. But this larger brush helps me to cover ground quickly. I probably could have even gone a lot larger with my brush size. It helps me keep everything loose, which is what I want in this beginning stage, but also it helps me avoid the temptation of getting too detailed too early. You can't get detailed with a large brush, and that's what I want at this point. To mix that dark color that you see me applying to the inside curl of the wave, I used burnt sienna and phthalo blue, with the phthalo blue being pretty dominant in the mixture, and that's how I was able to get that dark blue color. The phthalo blue is a powerhouse for dark values, I've found, and I can make it even just a little bit darker by adding that burnt sienna into it, which also helps warm it up a little bit too, so that it's not too stark blue, which I don't want. Burnt umber works for the brown in this mixture as well. It's just going to be a bit darker, and I might have used both in that shadowy portion. And you see me painting with these gloves. That is what I do sometimes when I'm painting with oils, just because it gets a little bit messy and I like to keep my hands clean when I'm painting. And so you'll see me pull out these gloves at different points. Now, as I continue to block in, I am using brush strokes that are very quick and loose, just like you see me doing it there. But also, I want to be cognizant of the way the water is flowing when I put these brush strokes in. I want to think about the direction the water is moving, and something that you can do to really help you make sure that you get the movement right is to have a reference photo. For this painting, I had actually several different photos that I was looking at. I even had some other paintings of seascapes by Frederick Judd Wall, who's one of my favorite seascape painters, that I was looking at for inspiration, as well as an actual photograph. Right here, you see me painting in the part of the wave that's a little bit higher up towards the lip, and I'm putting in more green. The green color that I used for that was Viridian Hue, and I believe I also mixed in a little bit of that yellow that I have to green it up. But I want the green to be slightly lighter towards the upper corner of this wave. That is because there is more light shining through the water higher up, and the water's true color is going to come through a little bit better because it's thinner up at the top where it's curling. The weather conditions for this scene here are probably a little bit more overcast and stormy, however, so I don't want to go overboard with the light green in the wave, because if I did put that really bright intense green or even bright intense blue into the eye of the wave, it would require some direct sunlight to get that color in the wave, which in this scene there isn't any of that bright sunlight. So in other words, just keep your painting consistent with the lighting that you've chosen. Now we're moving on into the second stage of the painting, which is called the modeling stage. And I am starting off on a relatively dry surface for this new stage. I'm also starting out in the lip of the wave up there. I'm just adding a little bit more green into it to intensify the colors just a little bit more. Like I said, I don't want to go overboard with that, but in this stage, I'm focusing on chiseling away some more of the shapes and just refining the image a bit more from what we had laid down in the block-in stage. I'm using the same brush that I've been using thus far for the modeling stage, but also I'm starting to add a little bit more of my brushes. I'm using, I think this was a filbert brush here, to darken the sky just a little bit up there in the top right corner. And in this stage, I'm really starting to nail down what I sought to accomplish in the block-in. The block-in set the stage for the rest of the painting, and all of the ideas that I had in the block-in that were vaguely suggested, I am taking now and perfecting them in the modeling stage. I am chiseling out the shapes a little bit more. I'm making sure that the details are going to be ready to be put on at the end. So I'm building off of the block-in, and I'm setting up the painting for the final details. That's really what the modeling stage is all about. So I'm starting to refine the movement of the foreground water. I'm refining the movement of the spray as well as this wave here. And I'm putting in finer marks. and using smaller brushes. The palette obviously is the same, but the brushes are going to be different. Here I'm upgrading to an even smaller round brush. These are synthetic bristles that I'm using as well, but I am now putting in some darker water movements in the background ocean, which we can only see a sliver of on the right hand side. And the colors that I used for that were Phthalo Blue and Burnt Sienna with some titanium white to lift the value. And in case you're wondering, I have the palette listed in the description box. So you hear me mentioning these colors. If you want to know all of the colors that I use for this painting, go to the description box and you'll be able to see there. And I'm using this smaller round brush for more and more detailed marks. Like I said, I want to set up this image for those final details at the end where I use pure titanium white, but I am not putting in those details yet. You can see right here, I am still thinking about some compositional things. Like you see right here, I am actually moving over the lip of that curling water up above farther to the right. The modeling stage is still a good time to shift different elements around in the painting if you're not satisfied with it. But you really want to get that done, I think, before you get to the details, because the details are the last thing that you want to put on. So take care of the compositional things in the modeling stage before you get to those details. Not to say that you can't change things even when you're putting on those last details if you change your mind, but it's more convenient to make sure that you have everything in the composition where you want it to be before you get to the details. Now, I do like to have less brushes to clean up after my painting, but I have noticed it is nice to have different brushes on hand to use for different colors. I can keep my paint colors very clean when I load them up if I'm not constantly dipping into other colors with one brush. So I have a couple different brushes that I'm using. Yes, it is more to clean up later, but it is very helpful to use different brushes for different colors. Now, as we move on to the final stage, I want to make sure that the canvas is dry before we move on, because it's much easier to put details onto a dry surface, I think. So that's what you saw me doing there. I'm testing the surface to make sure it's dry, and now I got my detail brush and I'm starting to put on those final details. Now, with this painting, I really wanted to make sure that I didn't put too much of those bright highlights on, which I knew would come at this stage in the painting towards the end. And so I didn't want to cross that fine line of too much titanium white highlights. So I thought the best way to make sure that I don't put too much on is to take it very slow. It's easy when you're rushed to put, I think, too much highlights on. And then you look back at the painting when you're finished and think, it's just a little bit too much. When you take your time, you're able to step back and look at the painting frequently to see how it reads. And I did that with this painting, and I'm really happy with the balance of highlights in the detail stage that I did put on. I think in the past, when I was doing a lot more practice paintings with seascapes, I would tend to put too much on, or I would try to overcompensate for that by putting not enough on. And I think it's easier to get that balance of the right amount of highlights when you take your time. And one of the things that I did notice as I took my time and really studied my image, seeing what worked and what didn't work, I noticed that the sky needed to be darker. That was something that I needed to do to help the wave, which is the focal point of this painting, stand out a little bit more. So I dropped the value of the sky even a little bit more. I had dropped the value in the modeling stage from what it was in the block-in, and now in the detail stage, I'm dropping it even more. I accomplished this by glazing. To glaze is to shade or darken an area with a thin application of a darker transparent pigment, which the paints that I used to do this were a little bit more transparent. Ultramarine Blue is a little bit more transparent, as well as the burnt umber that I used, but that is how you glaze. It's very straightforward, and it comes in handy when you encounter issues like I did, where I wanted to darken that sky. Putting on the final details into this white water, this frothing surf in the foreground here, was something that I did want to do from the beginning of the painting. However, I wanted to do it in such a way where it wouldn't be so detailed so as to detract from that wave. And the way that I accomplished this was I took my highlight color and I painted in these details, but I didn't take as much time on them. I didn't spend as much time in the foreground details as I did in the wave. I put in some splashes, some droplets here and there, but I didn't put nearly as much on as I could have, and I kept them very simple. You could say that I almost kept it more loose and impressionistic in the front compared to the wave. In doing this, I feel like I was able to accomplish the effect of the focus being on that wave. Now, I am an advocate of detail. I like realistic paintings, but for my style and where I'm at with my paintings right now, I want to make sure that I put my details on where they're supposed to be in highlighted areas so as to draw the eye into those areas. And I don't want to detract from those areas by adding in so much detail everywhere that you don't know where to look. If you're wondering what I used for these highlights, I used almost pure titanium white, and in some places I believe I did use pure titanium white for the highlight. This is only possible because for this entire painting up to this point, I have not used titanium white by itself in any one place. I have used titanium white in my paint mixtures, but I've never used just pure titanium white for anything anywhere yet. If I had used pure titanium white anywhere in this painting, I would not be able to use titanium white effectively as I'm using it now. I'm able to put in droplets. I'm able to paint areas of this wave where the light that we have in our painting, albeit stormy, is hitting. And when you do reserve your pure titanium white for the end, when you do apply it in those details and highlights, it really stands out and completes the image and makes those details pop all the more, because it is the brightest value in your painting. And that is a key to painting something like this successfully. If you reserve your titanium white for the end, it will stand out all the more. Alright everybody, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio. Really appreciated having you out. Yeah, but we'll catch you in the next video, and until then, God bless you guys. We'll see you later.